grab your pre-workout and turn up that volume. It is time for a new episode of the Powerlifter's Den with your host, Cam Smith. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Powerlifter's Den. I'm your host, Cam Smith, and today I wanted to bring on Jamie Matta, owner of Fairhaven Fitness up in Vermont. Jamie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jamie Matta. Myself and my wife Megan, we own Fairhaven Fitness up in Fairhaven, Vermont. I'm also an adjunct professor at Vermont State University. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, we'll get started by going into your background a little bit. I know that you started with kind of want to be the strongest kid in your school. Maybe tell us a little bit about that and where that kind of came from.
Yeah. So when I was younger, my God, I was 8th grade. And I started lifting when I was in 7th grade. Cousin gave me a weight set with pretty much sand in the plates and the rustiest old bar you've ever seen, little tiny bench. And I got to a point where I was in my basement and I could do all the plates, and I figured I was ready to join the gym. So I joined the gym. I was playing Pop Warner football at the time, and I only weighed 115 pounds. And I was going to high school, so I was tiny. So I pretty much figured that I was going to go vertical, so I needed to go more horizontal. So I needed to lift a little bit more. So I really got into lifting. Found a local gym that was pretty much right behind the high school, RMA non-lifts down the Cape. That's where I grew up. I went to Bourne High School down there, and then I started lifting. And then I put about 15 to 20 pounds on per year. I was like 115, then I was like 140 and 160, and I think it was 175 as a senior. And I just made a goal that every year to get stronger, help my performance in sports between football and track, and be the strongest kid in school.
Yeah, and then from there, where did you kind of decide to get into some competition? Maybe where'd you find it, whether it's through a magazine or a friend?
Yep. So my first competition was at Gold's Gym in Somerset, Massachusetts. That was going into my junior year in high school. So 1993. It was a bench press competition. So I did that. I think Al Thurston used to run some bodybuilding shows too. He was the meet promoter. Super nice guy. That was my first meet. And back then, everyone was equipped. I competed raw against a bunch of equipped guys. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew pretty much how to bench press. Everyone was like, you're pretty strong. Go ahead, jump in the bench press. I think I bench press 275. And that was as a junior. But I think I only weighed maybe 158, 160, maybe tops. And then made a goal the following year. I think I benched 335 at the same meet the following year. And I was like 175 then. And then I kind of took a little bit of a break from powerlifting competition. I went to school up in Vermont at Castleton University, now Vermont State University. And I played rugby for all 4 years. So rugby was a lot of running, a lot of conditioning. I still powerlifted in the off season, did some Olympic stuff, but I kind of took a break from competition. And I really didn't start competing again until like my senior year in college. Um, and back then, all the competitions that you found were all in Powerlifting USA. So you would read Powerlifting USA, you would have a list of meets that were out there, and then you would choose one or two per year, and you go to them. And that's pretty much how I started. Just randomly started out with bench meets, and then shortly after, I think maybe like 2098, yeah, somewhere between 98 and 99, the end of my senior in college, I started working towards full power meets, and then it went from there.
Yeah, I think a thing that a lot of people don't really think of kind of people who are interested in the sport when you're in college. If you're doing a sport, it's kind of hard to balance it because I mean I know my coach personally, like he was a big fan of lifting and like knew all the powerlifters and all the old like West Side guys and all that stuff. But anytime I tell him I'm like hopping in a meet prep and like the season just started or something, like he's like, "What the hell are you doing? Like you're gonna hurt yourself."
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can get away with it a little bit in the off season. You can definitely get away with it in the off season, but rugby is such a conditioned sport. You're playing 40-minute halves with a 5-minute halftime. You're pretty much mostly subbed by injury only. and you're running 7 to 10 miles a game,
Hmm.
and then on top of that, you got to try to lift in between. Um, so it was definitely one of those things that I would do more in the off season, do in the summers, and then when I was in season, I would train a couple days a week, and then I'd try to build it back up in the off season. So it had to take a break for a while, but I loved playing rugby. I wouldn't take anything away from it. Those are still some of my best friends today. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the college sports is definitely a very unique experience, and I think outside of obviously giving you some kind of athleticism to get into powerlifting, it also teaches you a lot of life lessons as well.
Oh my god, yeah. Yep. Yeah, definitely. Diversity with your training. You're doing different types of training. You're not just powerlifting. You're doing some agility. You're doing some explosive work. You're building up some work capacity, and then on top of that, you're building relationships. You're learning how to work together with a team. You know, and rugby's one of those sports that everyone's so involved. With the sport that everyone has a piece of that puzzle, and every sport does too. But especially rugby, everyone gets to handle the ball. You know, so it definitely, you know, very good in the fact that it really taught me how I wanted to build a team eventually.
Yeah, and I think another point to touch on from what you're saying before, how kind of all the meets were just in one location to find. Like you just open a magazine, you kind of got to pick. But nowadays, there's so many feds, there's so many websites, and there's so many things to pick from. Maybe what are some of the advice you have to kind of help someone decide on where to find a meet?
Yep. Yeah. Great point. I mean, back then, there was only so many meets in the area. There might have been, God, 8 or 10 in the whole year. Now there's 8 or 10 in a weekend.
Yeah,
So there are so many meets. I would say, obviously, once you discuss it with a coach, or a friend or who's ever guiding you, you talk about whatever goals you might have. Talk about whether you want to go equipped or raw or whatever direction you want to go within the sport. And then along with that friend or coach or mentor, then you decide on what federation you want to go. Obviously, for us up here, we do a lot of RPS meets. You know, Myself and my wife were the state chairs for Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and New York. But we also take lifters to APF and APO and IPA, and we've taken lifters to USABL. So nothing against any other feds. By all means, we're all supporting this powerlifting sport together. So there needs to be other feds. So you just have to figure out what's going to work best for you. Whether you want to walk squats out, whether you want to use a monoliths, whether you use more specific bars. It's all personal preference.
yeah, I totally agree, and I think kind of what you're saying about there's different feds. I think it's important that people realize that this sport is so niche as it is that we don't need to necessarily not necessarily not segregate because different feds have different ideas, and like you said, some use mono, some use combos, different things like that. But if someone wants to compete in a different fed, you should still be able to help them because this sport's too small to kind of distance someone for that.
Right, of course. Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the biggest thing with powerlifting, that really separates it, many times I've been to competition before where I was competing against somebody, lent them a bench shirt, and they beat me, you know, or lent them knee wraps or wrist wraps or something like that. So, you know, it's unlike anything other that I've ever done that you have that so much of a support system. Everyone supports one another. Everyone wants to see everyone get their lifts. Everyone's behind each other, cheering on your competitors. It's rare if you find any other sport like that.
Yeah, I mean it's the only sport where you're cheering on someone to beat you, basically.
Yep.
But as far as RPS, I know you're very involved with RPS, and recently just nationals just happened. So maybe tell us a little bit about that and how that went.
Awesome. Yeah. So for like the last year or so, we've been really talking about how to evolve RBS and move forward within the federation. Um, and Amy's, that's Amy and Jean's baby. They started RPS for the lifter, by the lifter, to bring consistent judging, to bring consistent equipment, to bring the best for each lifter. And as time has gone on, we keep working on those pieces of the puzzle. And nationals was the next piece of the puzzle. So to bring nationals, we wanted to have some sort of qualifying totals. So this year we had open and masters. All the other qualifying was basically they had to compete in the RPS meet prior to. This upcoming year, we'll add in teen qualifying, we'll add in junior qualifying as well. So each year, the whole point is for nationals to kind of evolve. Whether it becomes a north and south thing, we haven't got that far yet. We're working on. We just had nationals out in Rochester, New York. We teamed up with East Ave Barbell. It's a gym out there with Chris Harris and Tim. They did a great job with their whole team, helping spot, load, coordinate the venue, the whole deal. So we teamed up with those guys and put on a great meet. So it was excellent. Bob McCloskey came out. If people don't know who Bob is, Bob's a great guy, very heavily involved in powerlifting. He is involved with the GPC affiliate with RPS. So GPC is Global Powerlifting Committee, and they are the world affiliate for RPS. And eventually, the goal is to be able to bring a USA team to Worlds to compete. So, and we want to take lifters from nationals each year to be able to bring to a world championship. Next year it's in Brazil. This past year was in Slovakia. Almost 500 lifters,
Wow.
448 lifters this past year. They've had as many as 700 lifters, 2 platforms, 4 days this past year. So it's a lot. But we really think that nationals can be the feeder to go towards GPC Worlds, and nationals gives people, an end all goal for, this year for RPS to be able to compete to qualify for Worlds. So each year, nationals will be in June. The World Championships are always in October, and that'll get on the schedule this upcoming year. We're still trying to lock down the venue, so we're working on that now. I would say nationals will be out within the next couple weeks once we get the venue locked down.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I guess from the meet itself, maybe just kind of taking a step back and looking at overall how things went. What are some of the things that you want to repeat again next year, and some of the things that you want to maybe fix or add in?
Yeah. So one thing first off, the venue was awesome. It was huge. It was at Rochester Community Sport Complex. So it was big, tons of space. It's basically 2 turf fields side by side, plus a basketball court behind it for warm up. So the space was awesome. We had food trucks in the morning and food trucks in the PM. We had 4 judges be able to rotate. We had over 12 spotters and loaders rotate. So really that piece of the puzzle was really handled well. The next piece of the puzzle would be the promotion piece. This year obviously we put it out there, but we can definitely do a better job promoting it. Definitely do a better job um, getting spectators to support those lifters. But this year obviously we want to iron out all those bugs and so forth, and make it to feel like a true nationals. So we did goodie bags. I got stuff donated for each lifter, between t-shirts and stuff from LMNT, Bucked Up, you name it. So we definitely did a good job taking care of the lifters. Lifters all stayed safe. There was a couple dumps where those guys got caught. The chains caught it, and spotters and loaders caught it, so nobody got hurt. Not a single misload through both sessions. So honestly, I was really, really pleased. My wife Megan does a great job at the table, expediting the meet. It was really on time. The first session was 4 hours, 45 minutes, and second session was 5 hours, so really, really efficient, and still plenty of time for the lifters. That's the biggest thing. Like if you have a national level meet, you have a pro style meet, you want to make sure the lifters are taken care of. It's a lot of money to get out there and travel and so forth. You want them to have their best performance, so you want to have good equipment, good judging, good spotters and loaders, and plenty of room.
Yeah, and I think something that's kind of maybe overlooked is just having like the 12 spotters and things like that, especially for a meet that has more than one session. Because with everyone who's spotted and loaded knows how exhausting that could be. So if you can sub in and out, especially for a long day like that, keep the spotters sharp. It's not only going to make the meet run smoother, but it's going to keep the lifters safer.
Right. Totally. Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, we've been running session meets for quite a few years now. And obviously, if you have the same 6 spotters and loaders, you can rotate them, but they still get pretty tired. But if you have 2 groups of 6, you have an AM group and a PM group. I mean, now you're really efficient. Now that everyone's really fresh, the energy is high. You know, all that. I mean, it all for the most part, East Ave Barbell just did a fabulous job spotting and loading and helping us out with setup. We couldn't have done it without those guys.
Yeah.
And at home, we have our home team, from Fair Fitness that helps me load the trailer and set everything up so I can go out that way. So it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. So I think we can actually segue into Fairhaven. Maybe tell us a little bit about the founding of it and just kind of the culture there.
Yeah. So many years ago, let me think. So the gym itself started in 1995. It actually started in the bottom of a barn. The original owners were Keith and Linda Ross. They started the place with 25 members, just with a dream to grow this fitness center. And they built a community around this fitness center. In 97, they moved into the building that we're at now. And then in 2006, my wife and I purchased it with a goal to, move on towards athlete training, move on towards powerlifting, kind of branch out a little bit more. And that's kind of where it evolved. And the biggest thing that we wanted to build was around that team concept. So I would say the team's probably evolved like 6 times in like the last 20 years or so. So it's really been like 6 teams. So we're on another group right now. Um, Most of the time, I would say most lifters last between 3 to 5 years on average. You might get a lifter that's going to last 10. I'm literally from the originals. I'm the only one left. From you know 31 years now I've been competing.
Yeah.
So um, stuff happens. You get life in the way, and you get um, new job or somebody moves away. So keeping the team concepts, supporting one another, keeping each other safe, you know, um, doing different things as a team to keep the team together. That's important. The For the most part, the meets don't run without the team. The gym doesn't run without the team. So we need each other to support.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's a great point. Like you were saying with powerlifting, it's not a lifetime thing for most people. But I think it's important that as long as you kind of establish a culture, especially within your crew, whether you have someone leave or someone new come in, that culture doesn't change. Kind of think of it like a band. They have their own sound. They might get a new member, but the sound is still going to be the same.
right, right. Yeah, I think like when we first started the team, um, obviously I was still learning about how to build the team. There wasn't a lot of teams out there besides really West Side and some other teams out there, but it wasn't it wasn't so mainstream like it is now. Now everyone's trying to build their crew, everyone's trying to build their teams and so forth. Um, so you learn a lot. Like when we first started training, everyone trained the same way, same reps, same everything. Now we totally do it differently. Like we break things down into training groups, accessories, weaknesses, and so forth. So the team's really evolved quite a bit. And coaching's evolved quite a bit too. So
So what are some advice you'd have to say a gym owner, someone who's kind of like the captain of a crew, to kind of not only like keep things like a well-oiled machine, but kind of to enhance the culture in the gym?
So first off, make sure that you're thanking those people. Those people deserve thanks all the time because obviously without them, you wouldn't have what you have. So that's number one. And then two, as far as culture, making sure people show up on time, making sure that people are there that understand that they're there to support each other and make each other stronger. So it's not just about you, it's about me, it's about everybody. So if you're all getting stronger, that's the whole concept of the team. If something's falling behind, it's no different than a weak link on an athletic team. It's going to be addressed. So we want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So constant communication. One of the things that we've done to evolve. Obviously I talked about my weakness with technology a little bit, but some of the team members have helped out with Facebook with me and make sure that we have like our own team video page. So anybody that's a team member that's training locally downloads their videos on the team page. We can talk about it. I can look at the videos, to get that feedback going. Um, so that's definitely helped a lot. Doing consistent gatherings, whether it be a Christmas party, whether it be a barbecue, something at least a couple times a year that brings the team together, not just in the gym. So that way they're getting to know each other, not just in the gym setting. When people are relaxed, people get to know other things about other people, And that's what turns things into a family.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that last bit about kind of doing things outside of the gym, because at the end of the day, we're only in the gym for what 10 hours a week at most, probably, but there's a whole bunch of other hours, and this sport is one of the main things that you can take out of the sport is making lifelong friends. So being able to whether go grab a drink with someone or have a cookout or something like that is huge, and not only building relationships, but kind of gaining trust at someone in the gym.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. The trust piece is big. You get 700 pounds over your face or 900 pounds on your back. You want to make darn sure that you trust those people. So the more you know about them, the more you can talk to them, the more you can say, hey, can we tweet this? And, you know, they're going to be there for you. They're going to support you. They're going to catch you.
For
So,
sure. Well, speaking of 700 pounds over your face, let's talk about a little bit about your bench press career, some of your accomplishments, and kind of we'll dive into a little bit of the technical aspects as well.
yeah. Okay. So, bench wise, honestly, my bench really evolved when I started training with Ron Daly. And it was all by accident. We were doing a powerlifting meet in Burlington back in '05. So Cole had just been born. So Cole's our son. He was only 2 weeks old at the time. And he attended his first powerlifting meet. And I met this guy up there named Ron Daly. And Ron was a really, really good bench presser in the shirt. And I was new into gear. Um, I really didn't understand the concepts behind the gear and how to make sense of it. I was just super aggressive and I would just bomb into that thing. So Ron is like, "What are you doing? We need to fix you." So he owned a little gym in Glens Falls called Muscle Works. So I would go down there and train with Ron and Sebastian Burns. And anybody knows bench press, they know Sebastian Burns. Those two are absolutely unbelievable technicians. So they taught me how to read the shirt, how to read the bar path, what to look for. And back then, for equipment, I was in a single ply poly and I was making the change to denim. And denim was pretty much everyone had the same shirt. It was a 2 ply denim. Um, and basically, you had to learn how to pry against the material more. Now, of course, you see a lot more poly, but denim, if you didn't push back against the shirt and use the collar, you never would even move the bar at all. So you had to really learn how to read that shirt and press against it. So that's pretty much how it started to take off. And then I went straight from like 450 to a 500-pound bench to like a mid five bench, all within like a year and a half. Just by learning how to use the shirt, learn technique, learn how to arch, learn how to hold your arch. We even broke out laser levels to measure stroke, you name it. It was like a technical aspect of the sport was to learn how to pry against that shirt. Then we started using a lot more of those concepts when we did full power,
Mhm.
learning how to look at leverages for deadlifts, learning how to look at leverages for squat, making sure that you're pushing the gear on squat, and it kind of evolved from there. And then as time went on, um, the next step in the process was really getting that 600-pound bench. And took me 3 years to go between five and six. I was still stalled in the middle. And then Sebastian had me do a lot of crazy tricep work, a lot of lockouts, um, a lot of volume. And that's pretty much what helped me go over that next step. I really didn't use a lot of boards back then, hardly ever, if any, in the shirt. It was all touch work
Mhm.
to learn how to groove. And then I got that 600 in the denim, and I couldn't repeat it for a while. So then I made the switch over to poly, and then I gradually figured it out in the poly, a little bit different groove, and had a little bit more rebound. I finally found a shirt I liked. It was a metal jacked, and that jack shirt I absolutely loved because the collar was low like a denim. It bit my arm like a denim, but had more rebound like a poly,
Yeah.
and that pretty much got me over the next hump. And then I stayed 198 all the way through that process, each of those times. And then I gradually started um, making the switch to maybe go 220 or stay higher in the 198s. and started working with Brian Carroll. I worked with Brian Carroll for a couple years. He really taught me about peaking, how to peak properly, how to warm up properly, how to take care of my body. Um, and then I kind of got over that next hump, got to like 610 and worked my way up to like 660 in the poly. And then the band shirts came.
Yep.
And then chaos happened. So then once that happened, obviously the difference between the poly and the band shirt, the poly you can pull into the collar and you break in, you go forward and you pull down. And the groove is more of an angled groove versus the band shirt. If you're in a Womack shirt, like a bench daddy, you're pulling that bar right across to put more support behind the elbow. Versus if you're in something like a Mendy or you're in an F8, you're pulling the bar a lot more down with that groove, but still pulling the bar apart. And that rebound from that unlimited material wants to pull your elbows in. So it's completely different from benching the poly versus benching the denim and so forth. Um, so then I started creeping up in the unlimited. I finally got my 700 bench, went 710, 715, 727. Right now in comp, 735 is a PR. Right now I've been playing with 760, 770 pretty consistently and chasing down that eight. I mean, that's the end all goal is eight. I want eight.
So I guess from over the years of kind of breaking down the bench and getting in single ply, multiply, unlimited, and all that, what are some of the most common mistakes you see in lifters?
I would say number one, too much support to start. So I'm always a fan of the least amount of support to start so that you use the least amount of material and learn how to use that for leverage. And as time goes on, then you tighten up that material. I was blessed with to work with Sebastian and those guys. Sebastian would literally take in my shirt. Like he would look at my groove and he would literally take in the shirt. I'd bring the shirt up to the counter, he'd take it in. Next time I'd have my shirt taken in. So I was really blessed to be able to go through that process. So I would say if anybody makes any mistakes, I would say too much too soon. Less is more. So it's one of those things I'd rather see somebody learn the groove, somewhere between 3 to 5 reps, and understand that concept and then add the support after that. Um, and way too much board work. You're gonna touch. That's the whole concept. Just like you have to squat to depths, well, you have to bench to touch. So if you're doing boards over and over and over, sooner or later it's gonna bite you. Boards are there for a reason, and I'm not knocking boards because I use them too. But I always make sure that I rotate in touches. It's so important. The boards are there to work different ranges within your bench or cause overload or whatever you have to work on. But if you're not doing touches consistently, you're gonna miss in the meet. It's gonna happen. And yeah, there's a rare breed that can just do that, you know. But those are few and far in between. If you touch consistently, now you never have to think about touching. Now you never have a bit of doubt in your mind. You're probably gonna get that lift.
Yeah.
You know.
And for me, I think something that I've heard some people say, and I'm sure you'd agree with, kind of being able to figure out what the lightest weight you can touch is kind of pretty important, especially if I don't know you had a terrible day of squats or you're just not getting anywhere in the shirt. Like if you can figure out what the lightest you can touch is, then you can kind of use that as a leverage point to work from there.
I totally agree, 100%. Like if you can do a couple 2 to 3 reps of touches with a much lighter weight, and you can work that groove so you're not having to muscle through it. Too many times people just put on the weight to try to touch. And if you do that, sometimes I think you neglect the process. I think you get out of the groove and it's easy to just muscle through things. Sometimes you get injured, sometimes you swing forward and you get it. But again, you're kind of rolling the dice when you do that. I'd rather see you, work that groove, work the touch, and gradually add those pieces over time.
Yeah. And then something that I've seen a bunch of people struggle with, including myself, is kind of they can get down to that touch and kind of get the right line on the way down, but when they go to press it, they'll either kind of press it too fast, like they're pressing it raw, or they'll press it straight up and kind of lose that return path. What do you think are some of the root causes of that?
Yep. Um, that comes back to the reps again, consistent repetitions, 2 to 3 reps with the touch. The other thing is there's different tools that you can do. If you're not throwing enough, if you put a band on the bar where your training partner is pulling the bar back towards you and you're having to fight that groove, that's a useful tool. Sometimes we'll do front loaded bands. We'll put that band out in front and you have to throw against that band. Um, so there's different ways to get around those issues. And training partners. Training partners have to be on you. If you're pushing straight up, they got to tell you you're pushing straight up. Sometimes as a lifter, you can feel it. Sometimes you can't, especially when you're new. So it's up to your training partners to, try to get on you about that, riding the bar back. The other thing is also understanding how the shirts work.
Mhm.
So when you put the sleeve on and you're pushing back against that shirt, you're literally prying against the back of that shirt. So I always tell people treat it like a crowbar. If the crowbar won't work, what's the first thing you do? You're going to put a block underneath the crowbar. You're going to add that for more leverage to push back against it. Well, when you're benching, it's the same thing. If you need more leverage, you're going to push back against the sleeve harder to be able to lock that weight out. So I think sometimes people try to overthrow it rather than pry against it. And that's why sometimes I know it's crazy old school, but every once in a while, I'll throw some of my lifters in denim. We'll do like a denim night. So I have all these old denims. Everyone knows about the denim closet. I'll throw all those denims on and you'll laugh, but every single time those grooves get fixed in a hurry because you don't have that rebound anymore. You have to be able to pry. So I think it teaches back to that concept.
Yeah, and something that I've kind of started to figure out a little bit is when I do get that groove and I kind of do find that path. Usually it comes down to me being a little bit more aggressive with it and not kind of taking it too cautiously. But it's almost like trusting the shirt, where it's like you want to return it the way you brought it down. So, but when you're pressing raw, that's just not how you do it. So it's just a
Correct.
little kind of like creating a new habit for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. Yeah, definitely. You can get out of the groove raw, and if your speed is fast enough, you can definitely overcome it. If you get out of the groove in a shirt, obviously everything's compounded.
Yeah.
So it's going to be either really good or really bad.
Yeah. And then as far as I know, you're chasing the 800 bench, and you also mentioned that you want to kind of squat 800 and bench 800 in the same meet. So maybe what's the plan for that timeline wise or meet wise, and kind of how's that process going?
So I have a meet December 15th at Mass Iron, bigger than yourself.
I'll be
It's an
spotting you.
RPS meet. So I can't wait for that meet. So I'm hoping to go mid sevens for each, to high sevens, something like that. The 8 and 8 is probably about 6 months or a year away. Um, I'm gonna do that Mass Iron meet. Then I have the last man standing at the Arnold, and then we'll tackle those full power goals one more time.
Yeah.
Um, so I usually try to only do one, maybe two full power meets a year. Most time, the way the invitationals have been working, I've been so busy with bench and invitationals and stuff like that. This past year, I did the Arnold, the Anderson Bench Bash, um, which was an awesome meet. And that meet, they basically counted your 3 attempts as a total. But then I trained for this absolutely probably the most fun I've had at a bench meet, the F8 Invitational, which was 2 attempts in the single ply, 2 attempts in the multiply, 2 attempts in the band shirt. And that obviously took a lot of training. So it took me away from full power a little bit. I obviously kept training for full power, but it let me focus on that. I had a blast. So now we're back to full power. I'll go back to bench only and then I'll come back to full power.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that F8 Invitational. That seemed like a really cool concept and a really fun meet. You had a lot of heavy hitters trying to go at it, and it was interesting to see kind of people's different strategies. So maybe tell us a little bit about your strategies and prep, kind of balancing all the shirts as well as game day.
Yeah. Honestly, that that was a crazy one for the reason being. So when I was competing in the poly, I was 198 or 220, and in like the last year or so, I went up to 242s to chase an all-time record. I got it. It didn't last long, but I still got it. So now I'm gradually working my way back down. But that being said, a lot of my poly gear didn't fit me at 242. So I had to find the right gear to work within my groove and so forth. So it took me at least half the training cycle to find the right gear. And two of the shirts I didn't even use until the meet.
Wow.
Um, so it was pretty crazy. I knew what I could do had a concept. The whole point was to go with the concept that I wanted at the Arnold, which was try to hit every lift and put pressure on people to miss.
Yeah.
You know, if you hit each lift in training and you're consistent with it, odds are to meet, you know, you're probably going to be pretty successful. So the whole point was to go 2 for 2 on the single ply, 2 for 2 on the poly, 2 for 2 on the unlimited. I did make one mistake in the unlimited. I misgrew the first one, which never happens, and I'll tell you why. So when you're in the poly material, the handoff and where you take the bar is a little bit in front of the delt. It's just in front of your front delt, so that that bar path can go straight down and rotate in. Versus in the band material, if that bar is slightly forward, it tends to pull you forward in a hurry. So I tend to take the bar back like an inch, and instead I took the bar back a little bit, and I came forward. And when I came forward, it just dumped me forward. I obviously fixed it on my second attempt at it, but that cost me an attempt. So I went 5 for 6. You know, I hit 500, hit 600, and then I hit 7. So nothing crazy numbers wise, but it was still fun. I mean, I did 15 attempts in shirts in 2.5 hours. So in 3 different shirts. So, um, so it was a blast. And the other cool thing about that meet was they allowed my son to compete. My son Cole is becoming a great bencher. His leverage is great. He's really technically sound. And you know, he actually broke the teenage record for 220 for unlimited at 685.
Oh,
And that being said, he was in that shirt one time,
wow.
once. And prior to that, his PR was 600.
Yeah.
So he'd only used that shirt once in training, and you know, still was able to do that. So you know, Cole's, you know, his potential is absolutely insane. So so I was really blessed to be able to compete with Cole, and you know, guys like Tony and Jeff and AJ and all those other guys out there. You know, Greg. You know, all those guys are great guys, really technical, and enjoy that with my son and have my son, you know, see those guys compete. So it was great.
Yeah, and I guess for the strategy of kind of warming up, how did that? What was the plan for that? Because I feel like that's kind of an interesting thing to juggle as well.
So for me, I'm one of those people that honestly it takes me a while to warm up, and I actually do better with it. So because of all the years of training, um, I'm so used to doing a lot of sets and shirts, and it actually helped me. So for me, I would do, I literally did like 2 warm up sets raw, and then after that, everything else was in shirts. So I would do 2 warm up sets in each shirt, and then, you know, 1 or 2 attempts out there. You know, so it was like, I'm trying to think. I would do 1 set was off a board just to break in the shirt, and then 2 sets to the inner touch, go out there and hit my 2 attempts. Um, and then the only raw warm ups I did was literally my like 135 and 225. After that, that was it. It was an all shirt warm up.
Yeah.
I probably could have done without 1 warm up of each shirt, but I want to make sure that I had the groove right. And because I was just getting those shirts dialed in, because 2 of them were brand spanking new, I had to work through that. So I added an extra warm up set with the board, which I normally don't do, to loosen up the shirt. I'd spray it a lot with water, just to kind of break in the shirt a little bit more, and then I was able to get in there. So, and I didn't have any problem touching either of the poly, and like I said, they were both new.
Yeah. So that kind of makes me wonder about whether you're getting a new shirt to break it in, or you've had an old shirt and you're just trying to take care of it. What are some of the things that are pretty important in making sure a shirt kind of lasts and not tears, or you break it in too soon, things like that?
Yep. So great question. I wrote a good article for Nick Manarakis on big benches, so people can check that out. And it's all about the break-in process for phenoms and other poly material shirts. And it works with denim as well. Basically, you start with a higher board, a 3 board or a 4 board, and you keep your grip in. So pinky on the ring, 3 to 5 reps, spray the shirt. And then the following week, you come down a board, 3 to 5 reps, spray the shirt. Every single set that you do. Within a 4 week process, you gradually broken the shirt. You can touch. Your grip widens each week. So you go from pinky to ring finger to middle finger to index finger. And that was for me, that's my process for my grip. When I bench, my index finger is on the ring. Obviously, depending on everyone's stroke is differently, and everyone's grip is different. But in general, that's what I did is I widened up my grip, lowered the board, and obviously spray the shirt. I think people miss the concept of spraying the shirt, especially the collars. You know, a phenom is rolled, so you have multiple layers of material that's rolled, and that stitching tends to blow out quite a bit. So you have to break in that gradually, and you have to wet the shirt. If you're not wetting a shirt, that collar is done. It's not going to last. Now, if you have a shirt like some of the metal collar is definitely not rolled as often. There's only a couple rolls in there, and that material tends to really last for the collar. I mean, I had a couple of those Jack that I think one lasted 6 years. Um, and then if you have other shirts like the Katana, that super collar is really rigid. Same thing. You know, the benefit of wetting the shirt is it allows that fiber to stretch. You know, so I think especially if you're using a poly, using denim, something like that, I think you really need to do that. Now, that being said, if you're in an unlimited shirt, by all means, the breaking process is minimal. Sometimes you need to stretch it out just a little bit. And honestly, what I do is I usually take the shirt, either put a bar through it and pull the bar apart, or I take the shirt, hang it on the mono, and pull from it on the mono, just to give it a little bit of stretch in the chest plate. Sometimes when that chest plate comes out, sometimes it's humped a little bit. There's a bubble there, and sometimes that tends to flatten out the chest plate a little bit. But break-in process wise, that's what I would do.
Yeah, and then as far as maybe changing shirts, I mean, I think that kind of if you can keep a shirt around for a long time, it's obviously be beneficial to you because you're gonna know how that shirt works a lot more than just switching a shirt every few years. So maybe what are some of the things that indicates that it's maybe actually time for a new shirt in terms of obviously if you rip a shirt, it's a time for a new shirt, but other things like that to look for.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So one, you look at rebound. So obviously, if you're staying the same exact body weight, same weight, and you're moving the bar, and that bar speed starts to drop. Your training's been going really well, your lifts are going really well, but also that bar speed is starting to drop in that shirt. Odds are the rebound is out of that shirt. Especially with poly, especially with single plies, you're changing shirts pretty often. Now multiply tends to last longer. You could get a year or two, sometimes 3 years out of a multiply shirt, sometimes more. It just depends on how often you use it, how much you bench in it. For us, we bench often in our shirts. We're in two, out one, in two, out one. So we're in them quite often. So rebound is definitely one. The other thing is your size changing? Are you staying 188? You're going 220, going 242. Once your weight fluctuates between 8 to 10 pounds, that shirt's going to stretch. So you got two options. Either you can replace the shirt or you can take it in. And the thing to remember, if you take it in, you take in the triceps always first. Every quarter inch you bring in those triceps, you're going to bring the chest plate in too. So what happens is those strides get tighter, pulls the chest plate in a little bit. Now you all of a sudden shrunk the chest by a half inch too. So you get more out of the shirt that way. So I'm always a fan of let's read the shirt, see what the rebound's doing, then we can go to taking in the shirt. And then if that still doesn't work and the bar's not moving, then we can talk about another shirt.
Yeah, and then as far as maybe picking out a new shirt, I know some people like to try different things, but maybe if you say you had an SCP and it's a little worn out and you're thinking about going with an overkill, like what are some of the things you look for in kind of deciding what shirt's right for you?
So I would say the number one thing you have to look at is groove. Um, Overkill is a great shirt. Nothing against an overkill. It's a very tough shirt. The fact that you have to have a really strong pull, you have to be able to use your lats a lot more. You have to be able to have a strong tuck to be able to touch. It's definitely, I would say, more of an advanced level shirt. And those guys that use it at a high level get a lot out of them. So it's a great shirt, but I would definitely say if you're a newer lifter, I would use a more forgiving shirt if you're multiply, like a Phenom. The Phenom, the touch is definitely a little bit more broad. You can touch a couple inches here or there. The stretch is a little bit more. The last inch or two in a overkill is very, very tough to touch. So you have to be very patient, break in forward more, talk harder, and then you'll be able to touch. But a lot of people run out of patience trying to touch in that shirt. So if you're a patient person, you have a higher arch, you're great at tucking, maybe that's a shirt you can go to. The other options, obviously, for multiply, you have metal, and then you also have Titan. Katana is a great shirt. The only thing I'll say is sometimes the material stretches quickly, so sometimes you have to take that shirt in a little bit, especially on the triceps. And that last inch is very tough to touch. So same thing, you have to go forward a little bit more and pull straight in that last inch. And then there's the metal. The metal I would say is definitely a very easy groove. Definitely not a hard shirt to use, very easy shirt to use. Um, it's very, very tight along the bottom part of your triceps. So I feel it really helps on your lockout at the end. Um, and you can definitely jack the collar. The collar is pretty low, similar to, like I said, how the old denims used to be. So I like that. And then you have the new line, with Rob, those new F8 custom shirts. I love those things. Collar's low. I have a single ply F8 custom. Rob's done a great job researching with that stuff. And anyone that knows Rob, customer service is number
A1.
one. You
Yeah.
cannot touch that guy. So anything you need, that guy is there. Him and Tiff do an incredible job. So,
Yeah.
another option too.
For sure. I think maybe for you, what are some of the goals you have for the rest of this year? Maybe just in life in general, in the sport, maybe as a coach, things like that.
Yeah, great question. So we'll start with the lifting stuff. Obviously, the goal right now is, mid sevens, high sevens, this next meet. And I'd like to be able to swing for near 8 at the Arnold, if I have an opportunity to go for it. And I'm in a position to go for it, I'll definitely will. So from a lifting standpoint, that's kind of where I'm at. Coaching, I'm gradually expanding my online coaching. Um, we're at the point right now with the team where we have a good solid team here. We can obviously add a couple people here and there, but I feel pretty good where we're at. And then as far as online coaching, I'm always looking for new clients online. One, it keeps me really active, keeps me mentally constantly learning. Everybody's different, whether it be the groove, whether it be how they train, whether it be reps, whether it be nutrition, whatever it may be. I want to constantly keep learning too. So the more people I'm constantly working with, it gives me another tool to that toolbox that I can help out that next person and learn as well. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at with coaching. I'm trying to get to a point now um, where I do a little bit more spreadsheet stuff. Right now, when I do programming, I do custom work for every single person. It's just how I am. It's that whole old school mindset, but I want to make sure everyone is covered individually. No one person's the same, and it gives me that flexibility. So we're getting to a point where I'm merging the two, and it's paying dividends. In the last year, I mean, God, we've only missed a handful of squats, maybe like 4 or 5 of the squats out of over 100.
That's
So,
awesome.
so the numbers are pretty good.
Yeah, I think
So
as a coach, it's definitely important to be able to individualize things, but even if it's in a group setting, being able to, like you were saying before, about maybe separating small groups of accessory, because I mean, most of the time there's one or two, three at most weaknesses in a certain lift, but being able to separate it based on that person is definitely important.
right, right. Yeah, no, I definitely uh, as time has gone on, I've learned that, obviously not just one system is going to work for people. So we kind of run more of a hybrid. So we do one wave that is more like a speed and heavy. Then we do another wave that could be speed and repetition. Then we do more of a progressive wave, depending on the person. If somebody's new, I'm going to use a progressive wave where they're doing, fives 1 week, sixes, sevens, deload, and then start back over. It just depends on what their needs are, So I really try to pay attention to their individual needs, and we talk about it. The way that I program is 5 weeks at a time. 4 weeks worth of work, at least 1 week is a deload, and basically with that system, we talk about what they need to change during that deload week, and then we make adjustments based upon how they're feeling, how the bar's moving, any other things that we need to make, things that they might want to add in, that's worked for them in the past. Try to take all that stuff into consideration, and then we put together that next phase. So each phase leads into the next phase.
Yeah. Well, speaking of new lifters, I think we can kind of wrap things up here. So I'll ask you my final question. If you could give a new lifter or someone going into their first meet a word of advice, what would that be?
Be patient. You know, if there's one word of advice, it would be patient. Settle for those small PRs. There's nothing wrong with a 5 or 10 pound PR, because if you do that over and over and over consistently, they're going to lead to a big PR. So if you do 3 meets a year and you're putting 5 to 10 pounds on each lift, well, now you just added close to 100 pounds to your total in a year. You do that in 3 years, you put 300 pounds on your total in 3 years, you're doing something. So patience and consistency. You need to show up. If you're missing workouts, you're not going to see the progress that you want. You need to show up, put in the work, be patient, be consistent, and then the results will be there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to come on. It was my pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much, Kim. I love watching podcasts. I hear great things about it. I've seen quite a few episodes. So, I appreciate especially what you're giving back to sport. Things like this, Powerlifting Dan and helps only bring the sport together, helps promote the sport, so you're doing a lot of good things for the sport and for the lifters. So we appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.